The Ukrainian command has been throwing its troops wave after wave against these same exact objectives for 78 days now.
It's the same plan that we used last time, and the 17 times before that.
Now, in order to achieve a decisive breakthrough, Ukraine finally decided to commit its 10th Army Corps. Thousands of NATO-trained troops, fully equipped with Western military equipment. Those are Ukraine's last reserves for the offensive. Because according to the Washington Post, US intelligence says Ukraine will fail to meet the offensive's key goal. But I don't understand. Who are they trying to throw under the bus? We all know they made the plan. And talking about that, General Milley, it's time.
What I had said was this is going to take 6, 8, 10 weeks.
We finally reached the 10th week of the offensive. What now?
It is far from a failure, in my view.
But rest assured, because the Kyiv Independent reported, Institute of the Study of War, Ukrainian forces significantly advanced in western Zaporozhye amid continued counteroffensive. Not sure about that. You can see here the evolution of the front over the last 20 days. Ukraine gained roughly 1.5 kilometers. At this point, Ukrainians captured most of the settlement of Robotine, and overall they're just starting to take down Russia's first line of defense. And here's what soldiers of the 47th Mechanized Brigade admitted to CNN.
It's hard, he says. Very hard.
How do you think the fight is going in your section?
It's tough. It's tough.
Legend says the fighting is difficult because Bieber and Dolik were deployed from Bakhmut to the Zaporozhye front to halt the Ukrainian offensive. Those are the rumors, I don't know. Ukraine wants Robotine because that would allow them to control these heights, from where they could flank and encircle Russian positions west of the ridge up until Kopani. This would greatly improve the Ukrainian position in the sector as it would expand their bridgehead. Ukraine finally deployed its 10th Army Corps, as well as the very famous Maroon Tactical Group, which are now by far the country's most prepared and motivated troops. We're talking about roughly 20,000 men. President Zelensky even visited their headquarters in preparation of their sacred mission impossible, in preparation for their upcoming attack. Many Ukrainian soldiers are seen praying and taking part in religious ceremonies. The 82nd Air Assault Brigade is said to be the elite of the elite, and they came armed to the teeth. The 82nd Brigade has 4 battalions equipped with 40 German-made Marder infantry fighting vehicles, and at least 90 Striker APCs in total, supported by 1 tank company equipped with 14 Challenger 2 tanks. And let me tell you, it didn't take long before all this sweet NATO equipment got its baptism by fire. On the 15th of August, the Russians confirmed the destruction of 1 Marder IFV, as well as 1 Striker APC near Robotine. Here you can see the footage of the Russian Lancet going straight towards the Striker. With 15 confirmed losses, the Leopard 2s have completely lost their image of invincibility. Now we're all wondering when the famous Challenger 2 is going to receive his own baptism by fire. Now we can't talk about this Ukrainian offensive towards the Sea of Azov without talking about casualties. Estimates point towards 43,000 Ukrainian casualties during this summer offensive. Entire assault detachments vanished. Here's an anecdotal story from ABC News, mainstream media, where they interviewed a US foreign volunteer call sign Tango. He admitted that his assault squad of foreign volunteers suffered 85% casualties. Since the squad is composed of 12 men, 85% casualties means 10 men down, of which 8 were wounded. He also specifically reported 2 were KIA. And according to what he said, we understand that 3 won't come back to the fight anytime soon. So the squad is now down to 7 men. On the eastern part of the front, the Ukrainian 35th Marine Brigade managed to secure Staromayorsk by the 27th of July. But at what cost? Here, German newspaper Bild reported 31 armored vehicles lost for a village. One village! And behind me you can see the complete list of all these 31 armored vehicles that got destroyed or damaged. Most are MRAPs, like the British-made Mastiff that can carry up to 10 passengers. With 31 vehicles lost, you can imagine the extent of the casualties and manpower. Meanwhile, CNN in this article interviewed men of the Array Battalion. They're fighting side by side with the 35th Marine Brigade. Morale seems to be low. The Ukrainian soldiers ask themselves, why do the Russian troops fight so hard for these tiny settlements? The volunteers of the Array Battalion even admitted, we are very, very tired. Perhaps it would be time for them to be rotated out by the 39th Mechanized NAFO Brigade that have been sitting at the rear for far too long. Hi and welcome to History Legends. Here are the latest news of the Russo-Ukrainian War. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe. As you know, many of my Ukraine War videos have been targeted by limited or no ads. So make sure to check out my Patreon or PayPal to keep the show running. Thank you to everyone that has already helped. And welcome to the headquarters. So yeah, Ukraine is sending everything it got towards Robotine, a small village of less than 500 inhabitants before the war, that will definitely join the list of unknown places that will go down in history. To be honest, I'm starting to think the Russians are preparing a war movie epic about the Battle of Robotine. Just like in Panfilov's 28, they could portray a bunch of ATGM crews stuck in trenches firing at wave after wave of NATO-made vehicles. And it wouldn't be very far from reality. On August 11th, Ukrainian troops reportedly entered Robotine twice. Here you can see a Ukrainian soldier of the Skala Recon Battalion confirming that they did reach the entrance of the village. To break the Russian defenders, Ukrainian artillery makes heavy use of cluster munitions, which is essentially like aerial grape shot. And in this video you can hear the sound it does as it lands near Russian positions. These cluster munitions cause a great deal of injuries in infantry personnel. For example, in this video you can see that 4 Russian soldiers are necessary to lift one of their wounded comrades on a stretcher in order to bring him back to the rear. At this point, the village of Robotine became some sort of symbol for Ukraine. A symbol that there's still hope for their counteroffensive. So the Ukrainian command has been fighting tooth and nail over control of the settlement. By the 14th of August, we can see with this picture that the men of the 810th Russian Naval Infantry Brigade just held on to the southern tip of the settlement. The same day, Russian artillery even shelled a building in that same sector. So the capture of the village by Ukraine is just a matter of time. And the latest reports show that Ukrainians have indeed secured the northern half of the village. As a matter of fact, on the 22nd of August, a Ukrainian M2A2 Bradley with infantry support was seen clearing a couple houses at the east of the village. This axis of attack makes sense from a tactical perspective, since the Russians have strong positions west of the village, and all reinforcements arrive via the road, which is also on the western part of Robotine. Oh yeah, the orcs are taking a beating, and then it's a breakthrough to Crimea, right? Well, how can I put it? Say hello to my little friend! Well, the Russians have the village of Novoprokopivka 2 kilometers south of Robotine. Then there's their second line of defense, followed by the settlement of Solotka Balka. Right behind they have the third layer of fortifications. Whoops! Then there's another set of defensive positions before they can reach Tokmak, which is also surrounded by fortifications. What can we conclude from all this? The Russians fully expected to abandon Robotine at some point. Just like you on the hub, they were shocked they lasted that long. The problem right now for Ukraine is sending reinforcements in and around the village. They need boots on the ground to hold whatever position they just captured. Throughout June and July, the task to capture Robotine came to the NATO flagship 47th Mechanized Brigade, supported by the 65th Mechanized Brigade. Truth is, most of the guys of the 65th Brigade are mobilized personnel. Like you can see on screen, most of these men were civilians not too long ago. And I just hope that at least they got some decent training. So yeah, on the 24th of July, the Mobics of the 65th Brigade got hammered hard between Kopani and Robotine. Same scenario 4 days later. They launched an attack with a dozen BMPs north of the village. It was literally a frontal assault. And surprise, surprise, they were met by heavy anti-tank fire. 4 vehicles were completely destroyed, with some more units abandoned or damaged. Casualties might have been high because since then the 65th Mechanized Brigade has been brought to the rear. And the latest Ukrainian documents regarding mobilization push people to pick one of these 6 brigades, which includes the 65th Mobic-sized brigade. You can come to your own conclusion. Meanwhile, the 47th Mechanized Brigade was very famous for fielding American-made M2A2 Bradleys. In this video, you can see a platoon of 3 of them. They wait behind some trees for the path to be demined, and then they rush forward. Since the 4th of June, 51 units have been confirmed, visually confirmed as destroyed or damaged. That means 50% of all the Bradleys gone. Bradleys are very important to safely rotate combat personnel. Here we can see a Ukrainian squad leader waving at an approaching M2A2. The IFV then evacuates a 7-man squad of the 47th Mechanized Brigade back to the rear. One commander of the 47th Mechanized Brigade even said, "You cannot win a war with technology alone. Until the infantry enters, clears and secures the territory cannot be considered conquered. As always, you need boots on the ground." To this effect, 40-man strong infantry platoons are brought as close as possible to the battlefield. To this effect, armored fighting vehicles play Uber as they bring 40-man strong infantry platoons as close as possible to the front, and then let the riflemen continue on their own. From what I heard, they get a better rating on the app depending on how close to the enemy entrenchments they disembark the troops. The Russians are constantly pounding them with FAB 500 bombs whenever they detect any accumulation of Ukrainian troops. Plus, of course, mines as usual. There's this GoPro footage I can't show you, but let's say a Ukrainian squad has been sent forward on a path that has not been demined. And the guy at the front of the column, well, yeah. So a lot of the operations are carried out at night. Here you can see a Ukrainian M2 Bradley firing visual and infrared smoke screens to block enemy thermal sights from detecting them. During the night, infantry redeploys across the no man's land towards the front, and then take up positions in small dugouts and trenches the previous wave has built. From there, the next day, they storm enemy positions. The following footage from this Russian FPV kamikaze drone was very interesting. Essentially, it shows a very long trench, with the zigzag meant to reduce the effect of artillery, most likely built by Ukrainian riflemen and not by a machine. And here's a closer look. Clearly, it's not very deep. This trench has been dug quickly using shovels, and I suppose those were some sort of trenches that they dig as an approach towards enemy positions when there's no cover available. Essentially 17th century siege warfare tactics. So these infantry tactics did decrease equipment losses, but increased casualties in manpower. So Bradleys often intervene for medevac operations. This 8-man strong rifle squad had its vehicle hit, and 2 of their wounded comrades had to be evacuated. And like you can see in these images that I had to censor, the wounded troops are then brought back to the rear in some sort of open-air triage. I counted a total of 7 troops with combat injuries. Some are lightly wounded and can still walk, while others need immediate intensive care in hospitals. As you can imagine, such rescue missions are also risky. This M2A2 Bradley took a hit from a 105mm shell as it emerged from a tree line, with the Bradley reactive armored tiles eating up most of the impact. The crew reportedly was unharmed. Now, in this video, our friend Bradley showed up to rescue the 2 surviving crew of a tank that got destroyed. But Bradley soon got targeted by enemy fire. So the guy left. He literally abandoned one of the 2 Ukrainian tank crews behind. Come on, Brad. What the f? Despite their best efforts, by the 3rd of August, the bulk of the Ukrainian 47th Mechanized Brigade was withdrawn to the rear due to heavy losses. This is when the first reports emerged about the arrival of the 10th Army Corps that was kept in reserve until then. From all the evidence, we can conclude that the 10th Corps is formed by the 116th, 117th, and 118th Mechanized Brigades. But then the Ukrainian command also attached to it the Maroon Tactical Group, meaning the 82nd and 46th Air Mobile Brigades, the 72nd Jaeger, beefed up by ideologically motivated infantry of the Skala Recon Battalion, the 3rd Brigade Spartan, and the 15th Brigade Karadag, all this supported by the 44th Artillery Brigade. Talking about that, the 44th Artillery Brigade arrived at the front on the 7th of August. The role of the Ukrainian artillery in this sector was to block the approach of Russian reserves through fire control all along the TO408 highway and force the Russians to give up sending supplies and replacements towards Robotine. As an example, on August 22nd, the artillery of the 44th Brigade destroyed 2 Russian MT-LB armored vehicles on their way to Robotine. The next day, on the 8th, infantry assault groups of the 116th and 118th Mechanized Brigades attacked along the Robotine-Verbove line, but due to heavy losses, they were rotated out by fresh troops. This is when, on the 9th of August, 2 new brigades showed up on the battlefield. The 46th Air Mobile Brigade of the Maroon Tactical Group and the 15th Karadag Brigade, one of Ukraine's new offensive guard brigades. During the attacks of the 11th and the 12th, the 46th Air Mobile lost 9 armored vehicles, of which 2 were tanks. During the attacks of the 46th Brigade, a famous Ukrainian actor called Oleksiy Hilsky was KIA at 35 years old. Thoughts and prayers for his family. Now the important for the Ukrainian command was to continuously attack, hammer the Russians, and never let them rest. Ukrainian formations maintained their combat potential by rotating twice a day. The armored assault detachments of the 46th Air Mobile Brigade would break the enemy front using their firepower. They would then be replaced by the infantry of the 15th Karadag that would secure the area. And then these guys would be rotated out again, and they continue like that. By the 16th of August, the Ukrainian HQ deployed the entire Maroon Tactical Group. This marked the arrival of the main strike force of this new Ukrainian grouping, namely the paratroopers of the 82nd Air Assault Brigade. Immediately, the Russians managed to destroy their first Striker APC using a Lancet kamikaze drone, as well as a Mada IFV, both during the same day. The next day, the 47th Mechanized Brigade that had been pulled back to the rear managed to take down a Russian Ka-52 attack helicopter with their air defense. Reportedly, the co-pilot was KIA, but the pilot was still alive. So the Russians did something extremely unusual and flew an Mi-8 helicopter to rescue that guy and get him back to friendly lines. On the 18th of August, assault detachments of the 1st and 3rd Battalions of the 82nd Airborne Brigade started working on the Russian positions. After numerous waves of infantry infiltrations, Ukraine launched another armored assault on the 20th of August, right on the northern part of Robotine. Ukrainians reportedly lost 8 vehicles, 5 M113 APCs, 2 Strikers, 1 M2A2 Bradley, as well as a Leopard. There's another reason why the Ukraine command decided to send that many brigades into that breachhead. They can't push forward until the flanks are secured. Otherwise, they open themselves to countless flanking attacks. And lastly, we keep the best for the end. We have to talk about the Vremievsky salient. Located on the eastern part of the front, this is the only place where Ukrainians are actually having some sort of momentum. 1 week after the end of the Battle of Staromayorsk, Ukrainians went for Urozhaine. They launched the attack on the 7th of August. The battle was difficult because once again, Russian aircraft made sure to bomb any enemy regrouping of forces necessary for an assault. But on the 8th, they got a foothold in the village. 2 days later, they attempted an armored attack. However, it failed, and it left 4 BMPs destroyed or damaged. The constant counterattacks of Russian Storm Z detachments made life hell for the Ukrainians. The battle was hard, but by the 16th of August, the Ukrainian troops had complete control over Urozhaine. Here you can see some troops of the 137th Battalion of the 35th Marine Brigade that finalized the capture of the village. And we can expect some more Ukrainian gains in that sector. The front line is now centered on Zavitne Bajania, but I'll tell you, this hamlet is undefendable. The river lacks so much girth that the Russian defenders could be taken into a pincer from both the west and the east, and then they would be trapped. So it's just a matter of time before this settlement falls. So the Ukrainians are already preparing the battle for Staromlinivka. To this effect, the Ukrainian 37th Marine Brigade has been pushing east of Urozhaine to flatten the front line in order to continue the offensive without a threat on their flanks. We know this because of this Russian drone footage that was geolocated right here on the map. In this video, a column of 5 Ukrainian armored vehicles managed to push into enemy lines, where they met minefields and artillery fire. Of the 5 vehicles, 4 managed to regroup near the tree line, most likely to disembark some troops. This is when one of the MRAPs got hit. Of the 3 that tried to escape, only 2 made it back. Still, it means that the Russians have in fact lost this entire area. In the near future, we can expect them to do the same on the west side in order to eliminate this bulge and flatten the front line. The Ukrainians would then face this front running from Priutne to Novodonetsk. Once the flanks are secured, we can expect the Ukrainians to use the same tactics as they always do. One powerful hook on the left bank of the river, followed by a mop-up operation on the right bank. It will also be very interesting to see what the Ukrainians will do about Priutne and Novodonetsk. That's all I have for you today. Let me know in the comment section what you thought of my analysis. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to support my work, make sure to check out my Patreon or PayPal. The link is in the description below.